Hey, this is Max with Priority, and today we're going to be building the Priority Joker track bike. Please note, this bicycle does not meet CPSC standards for a bicycle. It has no brakes and is for velodrome usage only. This is a track bicycle, defined as a bicycle designed and intended for sale as a competitive velodrome machine having no brake levers or calipers, single crank to wheel ratio, and no freewheeling feature between the rear wheel and the crank. A track bicycle is not subject to CPSC regulations or testing. This bicycle is only to be used on a velodrome or similar track.
Before we get started, it's important to know that we always recommend that your bicycle be professionally assembled. Or if you choose to follow this video and do home assembly, we recommend that a professional bicycle mechanic safety check your bicycle before riding. Now let's get started.
Before we get started, we're going to take our phone and we're going to take a picture of the label on the side of the box. This label will have the model, color, size, and most importantly, your serial number, which you'll need for any warranty-related issues. Using a pair of household scissors or diagonal cutters, open the box. So in the box, we're going to have the bike, frame, and wheels. We're also going to have the seat post and seat attached to the rear wheel, and one small parts box. Inside our small parts box, we're going to have pedals, a rear reflector, and we're going to have our manual as well as our tools. Now's a great time to open this up and give a read through the manual. We're now ready to unpack the bike. Just keep in mind that we're going to save the fork for last. Now that we have all the other packaging removed from the bike, it's important to note that the fork arrives in the reversed position for packaging. We want to take the fork and turn it around 180 degrees. Now let's remove the packaging. You should be able to remove the fork spacer by hand, but if you're having any trouble with these bolts, just use the 15mm wrench that's included. At this point, we're ready to install the front wheel. It's important to note that indicated on the tire, there's a rotational direction, and you want that to be in the right position when you put the front wheel on the bike. If you can't locate the point where it says the rotational direction of the tire, just match the tread pattern to the rear wheel. So we're going to go ahead and loosen our axle nuts here. And we're going to push the washers on the axle all the way to the outside before taking the bike and putting the wheel into the front forks. We can now tighten down these bolts just finger tight for now. We're now ready to install the handlebars onto the stem. We're going to start by removing the 4 bolts on the stem faceplate with our 4mm Allen key that's included. If you have a little bit of grease, it's a good idea to put some grease on the threads of the bolts for the stem faceplate. So we're going to take our handlebars and orient them so that the drop is at the bottom. We're going to then take our bars and put them against our stem and line it up so the knurling is roughly centered on the stem. We can now take the faceplate and just hold it against the stem like so, and the bars just roughly in the correct position for now. We'll get it in our perfect position a little bit later. We'll start by taking one bolt at a time, putting it through the stem faceplate, and just with our fingers, we'll start to thread the bolt on. It's important at this point that if you feel any resistance here, stop what you're doing, back the bolt out, and start again. We don't want to cross-thread these bolts. Now that we have these bolts threaded on finger tight, we're going to take our 4mm Allen key and begin to torque them down. We want to do this in a star pattern. So I'm going to start in this upper corner, move down to the lower corner, back up to this corner, down here, and so on. And I'm just tightening these down all a very even amount. Your Priority Joker comes with a carbon fiber seat post. I would recommend using a little bit of fiber paste on the seat post. It's also important to note that the seat post has a minimum insertion line. You want the seat post inserted into the frame at least to this line, if not more. We're now ready to install the seat post on the bike. Go ahead and insert the seat post into the frame And then we're going to take our 5mm Allen key and we're going to torque down the seat post collar. It's important to note that there is a specific left and right pedal. You can figure out which is which by the sticker on the pedals indicating L and R for left and right. Also, at the bottom of the spindle, you'll see an L here to indicate the left pedal and an R on the other pedal. And then the left pedal will have knurling right around the axle where the right pedal does not. At this point, if you have some grease, go ahead and apply a little bit of grease to your pedal spindle. We're going to start threading the pedal in by hand. We'll begin with the right pedal, which threads in clockwise or to the right. Once you feel the threads catching, we're going to go ahead and take our 15mm wrench and finish threading the pedal in. If the pedal feels rough while you're trying to thread it in, stop, back the pedal out, and start again. We want to be careful not to cross-thread the pedal. We're going to go ahead and torque our pedal down. With your left hand, hold the rear wheel. With your right hand, hold the 15mm wrench. I'm going to push back against the wheel as I torque the pedal down. We want this to be 40 Newton meters or until the tool leaves an impression in your hand. We're now going to repeat the process on the left pedal. Let's go ahead and flip the bike around. Once again, we're going to take some grease and we're going to go ahead and apply that to the pedal spindle. Our left pedal is going to thread in counterclockwise or to the left. It will be the opposite of the right pedal. Once again, we'll start by hand. Once the threads start to catch, we'll begin with our 15mm wrench. And just as before, I'm going to take my right hand, hold the rear wheel, I'll push it towards the back as I torque down this pedal to 40 Newton meters, or very tight, until the tool leaves an impression in your hand. We're now ready to install the reflector. We want the reflector to be angling upwards, and we also want to install it as high as possible on the seat post. Go ahead and put that on, slide it up, take the screw, place it into the hole, and we'll take our Phillips head screwdriver and tighten that down. We'll now take the front reflector, put it in the preferred orientation here, and with your Phillips head screwdriver, go ahead and tighten that down into place. So now we're going to go over all the bolts on the bike and just make sure everything is tightened down and torqued to spec. Let's go ahead and start with the axle nuts. We're going to want these torqued down to between 35 and 40 Newton meters, or tight enough that the tool leaves an impression in your hand. At this point, we're going to torque down our stem faceplate bolts to between 7 and 8 Newton meters. Before you do that, check the position of your handlebars and make sure that they're in a comfortable position for you. Once the bars are in a comfortable position, go ahead and tighten these bolts down in a star pattern. At this point, we want to check and make sure that our stem is straight and aligned with the top tube in the front wheel. If it needs to be adjusted at all, you're going to want to loosen the pinch bolts on either side of the stem and orient the stem to be straight. Once your stem is straight, you can go ahead and torque these bolts down to 7 to 8 Newton meters. It's a good idea at this point to also check your headset. What I would recommend doing is bouncing the bike a little bit or placing your foot in front of the wheel and kind of rocking the bike to see if you feel any motion in the headset here. If you do, you'll need to loosen these pinch bolts a little bit, take your 5mm Allen key, and just tighten down the bolt on the top cap here. Once that is torqued down, re-torque the pinch bolts on either side of the stem down to 7 to 8 Newton meters. We want to check the torque on our chainring bolts. We're also going to check these in a star pattern as well, and we want these to be around 12 Newton meters. We'll now come over to the back of the bike and we're going to check our frame split bolts. We want these to be around 14 Newton meters. At this point, we want to dial in our seat post height, so go ahead and loosen the seat post collar and set the seat post to your desired height. Once you have that, go ahead and use your 5mm Allen key to torque this bolt down to around 6 to 7 Newton meters. Lastly, set your desired saddle angle. Once it's set, you can torque the bolts down underneath the saddle to 12 Newton meters. You now have a fully assembled Priority Joker. We strongly recommend that you take the bike to your local bike shop and have it safety checked by your local mechanic. If you have any questions at all, just reach out to us, and enjoy the ride.